soccer-style kicker, not a straight-on kicker. I can tell you that this is an extremely exciting thing for me, a Birmingham native. The Monday morning quarterback club's been important to me all my life. You know what, the first big game I ever remember being played was a clinic game of the high school champions here in Legion Field. So I've always been fond of that. And then the Coach Saban legacy, which we all know, that's a special term. And yeah, he's the GOAT, and it's not easy to be a GOAT. A lot of people may claim that, but he is. And then Coach Dye, I had a long relationship with as a very young guy, helped me in a coaching circumstance. I called him. I wanted to hire somebody that had played for him that was in coaching, and he accommodated that. I hired that person, who's Ron Middleton, twice, once at Ole Miss and again at Duke. And Ron and I, when we talked about this going in together, I got Ron crying because he's so fond of Coach Dye, as I was. And so I told my wife, she said, don't act like that. I said, I'm not humbled. I'm almost humiliated to be my name to be used with a giant like Coach Dye at the same time. So with that, thanks for being here. I thank the Monday Morning Quarterback Club, and I thank not only Coach Saban but Miss Terry for sharing this night with a lot of us. So with that, I'll take any questions that you've got, or not.
When you look back at your career, what moments are you the most proud of?
When former players come up, and I have now some 50 years later, and they repeat what you said to them, that almost makes me tremble. One of them that's a pet peeve of mine that I often get from players is, we know, leave a place better than you found it. And my dad taught us that in a hard way by picking up everybody else's garbage at an event, and ours as well. But he told us a Cutcliffe leaves every place they go better than they found it. And I believe that we've tried to do that with players through the years. A moment for me, and I don't know why I go back to this game, but we were at Tennessee and hadn't had the kind of success that I would have liked for Coach Majors to have when we played in the Sugar Bowl against Miami, and it became the Sugar Balls. That game just stuck with me. And I told our team that day in a team meeting what the score was going to be. I was right. And I thought we had a great plan offensively. Darryl Dickey was our backup quarterback, played at an extremely high level. It's the Sugar Bowl. It's the Dome. And wow, you know, it was deafening. And I guess I could say from that perspective, and I'm an Alabama guy and I'm an SEC guy, but I've never heard Rocky Top sound so good as it echoed in that dome. I can promise you that. So that's just a memory of a game.
As someone who was a coach, when you look at Nick Saban's career, what made him different? What made him special from a coaching perspective, not from something like that?
Well, unfortunately, I had to coach against him. So I know well, in my mind, this is a pet peeve of mine. Coaches, I hear them at times coach how to do something or what to do. I think Nick Saban was the best coach ever at teaching young people why you do something. If you understand why, you can adjust a defense. I knew coaching against his defenses as an offensive guy that those kids were going to adjust, and they knew why. And you're ahead of the game. So he is an ultimate teacher. When you're at one of his practices, which I've gone to, you see the teaching in action. And I just haven't seen that done better. The other thing that probably, I would always tell players this, more important than ability is consistency. Who can bring it every single time? Every day the same. That describes Nick Saban. When I was at Duke, he asked me to come down and speak at their coaching clinic, and I did, and I came in early and just watched and observed him, had some meetings with him. The standards don't change. There's a standard of excellence. And the more you think about it, I know Coach Bryant was that way. I witnessed that. What the standard was the standard. And that meant everybody there does it. But everybody in that organization, I know he had coaching changes, but when you looked at the weight room, you looked at operations and Ellis Ponder and Jeff Allen, the trainer, and just day after day, everybody did what they do better than anybody else anywhere else could do. And that's the Nick Saban way. Not always pleasant for everybody, but that's okay.
Coach, what do you think you, Nick Saban, and Coach Dye all have in common that really solidify your legacy as a winning head coach?
Without question, we all got into coaching for the same reasons, to help develop young people on and off the field. You teach people how to win properly, then you're teaching them everything they need to know about being a winner in life. That's important to us in our era. Everything they need to know about being successful in life and all aspects of it. And guess what? That's harder than football. I think everybody here would attest to that. And so we got into it for all the right reasons. The influences people in our lives that were coaches had on us impacted us enough that it was a dream to become a coach, which is a beautiful title when executed properly. So I am proud that I was a coach. And you know what a coach does? Young people way back in England, they would get in a coach and they had a place they wanted to go to. And then all of a sudden it was referenced as a person. Wow. What a responsibility that is to take somebody from where they are to where their desired destination is. I know that's why Coach Dye coached. I watched it. I know that's why Nick Saban coached. Those pure relationships, I watched it. So I'm just proud to have, mine may be theirs with a capital C, mine may be with a small c, but I'm just proud to have the same title.
Coach, to be from here and to be back here in the city, the state where you fell in love with the game, did you envision yourself being here? How special is it to have that uppercase C with these guys here?
I never saw what people would call success or notoriety. I will tell you this, at a very young age, I had made my mind up I was going to pitch for the Yankees or play quarterback at Alabama. I didn't do either one of them. But if somebody had told me I wasn't going to pitch for the Yankees, I'd have bloodied their mouth before they finished the sentence. So the other moment in sports I'll tell you about now, it would be comparable to this. I got to throw in the first pitch at Yankee Stadium. Whoa! Walked out on that mound. They told me, well, you can throw it from in front. No way. Put the foot on the rubber and throw a strike. And so as I said, the first game that I was aware of, I think I was 6 years old, went to the clinic game. My daddy's youngest brother, Honey Cutcliffe, played in it. I had a cousin that played in it. Everything stopped around the clinic game. And that was the Monday morning quarterback club, and I got many friends in that club. So that's a big deal. And what they've accomplished, that's even more of a big deal to me, that we're right in the shadows of Children's Hospital and what these men and women have done through the years.
Any other questions? Last one from
Well, many that beat me, when they beat you, you better learn, right? And so there's no question that's part of it. But it started with me in high school. George Oscar Shorty White was the head coach at Banks High School when I was there, and we were really good and had a great impact. My brother Page, who will be here tonight, who played at Banks, also played at Florida. He started out into coaching. Bobby Johns was on the staff. Bobby was in an All-American at Alabama. Mike Dutton's another one. So it started for me there, and at 15, my dad died in an automobile accident, and so I think coaches saved my life. So I'm still giving back the best I can. And then being able to go to Tuscaloosa, and that's a crazy, winding story. I thought my mother was going to kick me out of the house. We didn't have much, but I found a way to get there. And Coach Bryant, Coach Moore in particular, Ken Donahue, the whole staff, Pat Dye, Dude Hennessy. I was reminded by Kirk McNair, longtime sports information person at Alabama. He said, they called you the pest. I said, good. That was my intention, was to pester them and learn everything I could. And so I thank the good Lord for that. I don't think that's lucky. I think you have to be fortunate. I don't believe in luck. You put yourself in a circumstance, take advantage of it. And then I was going to be happy as a head football coach at Banks High School. That was the dream job. And Johnny Majors came and watched practice. Supposed to be there 15 minutes. He stayed the whole practice, said, I want to see you in your office. I'm in trouble? What's up with this, And he says, I'm going to call you and hire you after the season. I don't know where you learned to coach like that, but I'm going to hire you. Yeah, right. We had some prospects. Yeah, come on. And sure enough, he and Philip Fulmer called. I went up there. The only mistake I made in that interview was not asking him what he was going to pay me. And when I got my check, I thought it was for a day, and it was a month. So it was an interesting time for me. And then Philip Fulmer, of course, he is one of the most persistent, persevering human beings I've ever been around, and learned a lot with him. But Coach Majors was great as well. And then the list is so long, but I will say this. Every assistant coach that worked with us, I learned from them. I learned from every player. I try to tell young coaches all the time, the challenge is you teach a player. I try to teach quarterbacks everything I know. And then you realize they're the functional part. They actually know more than you do. And I'm very appreciative of those communications through the years. And that's a great way for young coaches to learn. Listen. So, yeah, a lot of people influenced me, and I hope I hadn't hurt anybody's feelings. If I have, I'll come cut your grass or something. Sorry about that.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all very much.
Was it a strike? Was it a strike?
Yes. No, see it? I got to turn my phone off. I can see it really good. I'm going to prove this.
That's still I still think I could get pictures in your game.
Well, I was really seriously, and I had my high school club, and I was the proudest guy in the whole United States.
How'd you get to do that?
I guess they had heard how big a Yankee crazy fan I was before, and then we coached in the pinstripe ball and won it. And that was almost the moment when you asked, when we won.
to say how much I miss you all before we get started?
We know.
You know. Great. Well, look, this is a wonderful occasion from my standpoint. I think, you know, coaching is a great profession because it's just like teaching, which is inspiring learning for young people. And I think this gives us an opportunity to recognize folks that have had a tremendous impact on so many lives in their career. Also contributed to innovations of the game. Their leadership has been something that has been inspirational to many of us professionally as well as players. So, you know, this is a great opportunity to recognize people who've had great careers and a tremendous impact on our game in so many ways. And it's always fun to be here. So we're excited about the opportunity and, you know, looking forward to, you know, Coach Dye and Coach Cutcliffe, both guys who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, receiving an honor and award that is absolutely something that they more than deserve. So we're happy to be in a position to be able to honor them.
We'll go ahead and open up for questions.
Coach, you had mentioned just about Coach Dye and Coach Cutcliffe having an impact on players. With the changing landscape of college sports, football in particular, do you feel like that coaches' roles are changing as far as what their responsibilities are toward their players and how their players view them?
Well, I don't think there's any question when you change the dynamic of, and first of all, I think college football is great, and I do think that, you know, players should have the opportunity to make some money relative to the amount of money that this has become. But I also think you have to take into consideration the fact that there's usually only 2 sports at each school that make money to support 18 to 20 other sports, which creates a lot of opportunity for a lot of other people. So, you know, we have to kind of make a decision. Are we going to be educational institutions that offer opportunities, or are we going to be universities that sponsor professional teams? And I think that's a tough balance, you know, that we're all trying to create. Because you change the dynamic, you know, when I went to college, and the rest of us probably went to college, we went to college to create value for our future. You know, that was the whole goal, the whole purpose of what we were trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do. And now we've sort of created a paradigm where lots of guys are making decisions about where they go to college and how much they transfer based on how much money they can make. And I think when you change that paradigm, you know, you change the whole sport in terms of how do you coach, how do you develop. You know, be a great question to ask NFL coaches, because they have a different perspective on how players are coming to them now, which is a reflection on how they developed while they were in college. So I do think it's a different dynamic, but I think that, like all obstacles, you know, we all have to be really resourceful in how do we come up with ways to get players to develop and do the things they need to do that are going to create value for their future, not only in football, but as people and also as students in terms of career development. And, you know, we don't hear a lot about guys that transfer and don't graduate, or guys that transfer and can't major in what they want to major in and be eligible, so they major in something else. So, you know, this is not all a positive thing. So, but I think we need to make it one, because I think college football is, you know, a great, I mean, there's so much fan interest, there's so much enthusiasm for it, there's so many people that relate to it, and there's so many people that can take advantage of opportunities that we all need to never give up on it and try to make it something that works for everybody.
What was your advice for Bill Belichick when he decided to coach college football?
I didn't give him any advice, you know. He's my mentor. He gives me advice. I don't give him advice.
For the college game as opposed to being the pros?
Well, I didn't really, you know, discuss it with him, but I think, you know, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between coaching a college player and coaching a player in the NFL. If you're a good coach, which Bill is, and players see that you're teaching them You know, in college, their motivation was they wanted to get to the NFL. In the NFL, they wanted to extend their careers, play longer, make more money. So the motivation was a little different. But if you were a good coach, the players responded to you exactly the same way. And, you know, Bill is a really good coach, and I think the players will respond to him really well. Now, anytime you have a change, you know, you have a lot of obstacles to overcome because of the changes and what the changes create in terms of players leaving, new players coming in. So it's a little harder to get your feet on the ground in terms of making an immediate impact than maybe it was before all this was the way it is.
Coach, when you had mentioned teaching, so did Coach Cutcliffe. When you had a player that you were working with get it and start making those positive steps, how did that make you feel?
No, great. You know, I think that's a lot of positive reinforcement when, you know, my whole goal as a coach was how much value can you create for a guy's future in terms of how he developed as a person, how he did in school in terms of career development, graduating, as well as, you know, what kind of progress is he making and how's he developing as a player. So when you had guys that made positive steps in those directions, you know, it was very self-gratifying because that's exactly what you were trying to get people to do. And, you know, sometimes you had to make them do things that they didn't want to do that was really in their best interest if they did it. And at the time, they didn't like it. But just like all of us, always went back to our parents when we cussed them under our breath and they made us do something we didn't like when we were growing up. And then all of a sudden, when we got old enough to realize, wow, thanks for doing that, Dad. You know, I mean, it's the same thing.
With Coach Dye and Coach Cutcliffe honoring them today, can you describe the impact they've had on the game and what it means to honor these two today?
Yeah, well, I think both guys were, you know, Coach Dye was somebody that I always respected and looked up to because he stood for a lot of the things that we always stood for in terms of how he developed players, the toughness. You know, he won a certain way, and I think he won the right way. And, you know, one thing that I would love to say about Coach Dye is, you know, being in Alabama, you have Alabama and Auburn folks, but every time I ever came across Coach Dye, you know, there was always a mutual respect that he always afforded to me, even though I was a coach at Alabama, and because he respected the profession and what you were trying to do, and I respected him for what he had accomplished and what he'd done and how he continued to impact people. I think Coach Cutcliffe is probably one of the best quarterback teachers and one of the best offensive coaches. I actually tried to hire him at Alabama once because of that respect that I had for him. And, you know, sometimes I think, you know, he did a fantastic job at the schools at Ole Miss and Duke, which not necessarily Texas, Alabama, Ohio State. And I think sometimes, you know, our record, because we had better opportunities, reflects that. But as a teacher and a coach and a developer of people, I don't think it gets any better than Coach Cutcliffe and, you know, Coach Dye as well.
Coach, your longtime assistant, Scott Cochran, has taken on a new challenge over at West Alabama as a head coach. Wonder if you would share any thoughts about that relative to Coach Cochran and relative to the challenges and opportunities that face any head coach at any point.
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, you always look at the level and the expectation of what you can accomplish at each level when you take a job. But I think the people he's going to play against are in very similar situations to him. So he's going to have an opportunity to be successful. I know he has a lot of our former players on his staff, so I'm really watching and looking forward to rooting for them and hope they all have a chance to be successful and can launch their careers, not only him as a head coach, but also, you know, some of the assistants who played for us at Alabama. But, and I think, you know, Coach Cochran's enthusiasm, his knowledge, what he's learned through the years, what he's had to overcome, are all going to be things that are beneficial to him helping develop people in his organization.
Final question.
What's a moment that you had with Coach early on that shaped the way that your career went?
Which coach?
Maybe something that was said to you while you were playing by another coach, or while you were early in your coaching career, something that someone told you that influenced the way that you went about?
Well, I had so many good mentors. You know, Don James was my college coach, and a lot of the things that we did for 50 years were things that he did in terms of the total philosophy of developing a total person, student, and player, as well as how we recruited players. I remember the last conversation I had with Coach James. He was in the hospital, had pancreatic cancer, didn't have long to live, and it was a Monday in the fall, and we were practicing that day. And we used to do progressives when I was a player, you know, up 10, back 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 100. And I said, Coach James, I know it's been a long time, but we're doing progressives today because it's Monday. So, you know, George Perlis was a great mentor at Michigan State, who was the first person who gave me a responsibility of being a coordinator. You know, Bill Belichick, probably I learned more from him in terms of total organization, as well as how to define the expectation for everybody in the organization. So, I mean, I've just been so fortunate to have so many good mentors. I mean, my high school coach was, you know, a great mentor. My first coaching lesson I learned from my high school coach. I was a sophomore in high school playing quarterback, and we were playing at Masontown Valley. You had to walk through the graveyard to get to the playing field, and we had to win this game to get in the playoffs. And we got behind 18-0, and we came back in the second half, and we had 18-12. We got the ball to go 2 minutes, and I called the plays. I was 15 years old, and we go down, and it's 4th and 12 at the 25-yard line. And he calls our last time out. And I was relieved because the last guy in our town turned the lights out. Everybody went to the game. So the whole community is there, and I'm thinking, I got to call this play now on 4th and 12 to win the game. And he calls me over the sidelines. He called me Young Nicky. He said, Young Nicky, what do you think? And I said, I think you should call this play. That's what I think. And he said, well, you got the fastest guy in the state playing a left halfback and a 3-time All-State guy playing split end. I don't care what play you call, one of the two of them need to get the ball. So I called 26 crossfire pass, which is play action on 4th and 12. Not very smart, right? Faked it to the fastest guy, threw it to the other guy for a touchdown, and we won 19-18. So after the game, he says, when you're in a critical situation in a game, don't think of plays, think of players. So that was my first coaching lesson, even though God knows I didn't have any aspirations of being a coach at that time. But anyway, I just wanted to get out of Masontown.
Well, thank y'all so much.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it.
opportunity, and then the way they've continued to honor him, you know, obviously supporting his candidacy for the College Football Hall of Fame, which he entered in 2005, naming the field Pat Dye Field in 2005, erecting a statue outside the stadium with Coach Jordan. They've dedicated the first home game, the Ball State game. It's a Pat Dye reunion. They've invited all the players and coaches that played for him and coached for him to come back. And when you think about, Dad was there for 12 seasons, and if you think about the kids that were the seniors when he got there that had been there for 3 or 4 years, and you think about the freshmen when he left, they were there for 3 or 4 more years. That's like 20 years of players that he touched, you know, and obviously when he got there, he hadn't recruited any of those guys. And I was at that first meeting he had with his team, and I thought it was pretty profound. He said, I know none of y'all came here because of me. I didn't recruit any of y'all. But he said, if you love football and you love Auburn, we're going to be okay. And I thought that was a great way to, you know, great way to start things. But yes, I'm an Auburn graduate. I wear these colors proudly. I'm not the maniac that hates Alabama. I pull for Alabama. I've represented far more Alabama players in my own NFL agent career than I've represented Auburn players, and part of that's because Alabama's had more players. I mean, just being candid, but Coach Saban's been great to me. He opened his doors to me and tapped me as one of the good guys in the business and allowed me to have access to his players, and that led to me representing guys like Rolando McClain and Dante Hightower and Eddie Lacy and Landon Dickerson. So, again, Coach has been great to me in that regard.
Any other questions?
How much has the game changed, even in the last few years, from your perspective and your business?
Well, listen, I mean, do we not have NIL exhaustion? Have we worn that topic out? But it is, I mean, it's like the end of the world to me. And not because the players are getting paid. They asked me the other day on a radio hit here in Birmingham about how would Dad like the NIL era. And I said, well, first, he would love the fact that players are getting paid. They work their tail off, particularly the ones that played for him. And the sacrifices they make, their time, their bodies, all that, they should be getting paid. But it's gone so far in the other extreme that I think it's setting up young men to make decisions based on the wrong criteria. Where am I going to be? Where's a good scheme fit for me? Where am I going to be developed as a player? How about the academics? How about the geographic proximity to my family? You know, I'm a city guy. Is it a city school, rural school? What? I mean, just all of those things should be the things you're thinking about. How about my relationship with a coach or whatever? And it's gone. I was just talking to Coach Cutcliffe about this. It's just gone from being relational to transactional. And I think that would have undermined a lot of Dad's success because he was so relational, and he could go into a living room, white, black, rich, poor, north, south, whatever, and beat Georgia on a player in Atlanta or beat Alabama on a player in Birmingham. You know, when Auburn is not where those programs have been. Auburn's not where they are now. But that's how he had success, is transcending, you know, those traditions. And now, I mean, that personality, relationship, and bond, or whatever, I don't know, it would be so diluted in a young man's decision, I think. So I don't think he would like it very much.
I think the thing with this award is obviously achievements as a coach, but also contributions to the game overall. When you're here shaking hands with these coaches who talk about Coach Dye and what he meant, what he represented, players, you see at that reunion game. I mean, what sticks out to you? What do they say about his impact, the contributions he made? What's that feeling like in 2025, kind of seeing it years and years still be there?
Well, you know, with Dad passing in 2020, I don't want to say I've had to do a lot of these things. I am so honored and thrilled and excited to be here on Dad's behalf, but I have had to accept a lot of awards and honors and recognition on his behalf. I'll be doing it again in Auburn in 2 weeks for the Ball State thing. And I didn't know this. David Cutcliffe was at Alabama in 71, 72, and 73. Those were my dad's last 3 years at Alabama. They were very close. Coach Cutcliffe was like running Bryant Hall, the athletic dorm, and I was over there all the time. And long story short, he just came up to me and said, I almost start trembling seeing you, thinking about your dad. And what he meant to me when I was at Alabama, what he meant to me as an up-and-coming coach. And he said the first person that I called on this planet, other than my wife, to tell her I'd taken the job, when I started building my staff out, and maybe that's the way he was saying it, I called your dad. He said, I want one of your former players on my staff because I admire the way your players played so much, how tough they were, how physical they were, how well conditioned they were, how well prepared they were, all those things. And the player Dad recommended was a guy named Ron Middleton, and he went to Ole Miss, and then Coach Cutcliffe took him to Duke with him, and Ron Middleton's coaching the tight ends at New York Jets now. So hearing things like that, and I'll tell you, the guy that just left this room had a lot of respect for Dad. And I know he can't go broadcasting that when he was the coach at Alabama, but I know because he's confided it to me. He said it in his interview on Dad's documentary, what he thought of my dad, and again, all of just the dynamics of the respect my dad had for Coach Saban, the respect Coach Saban had for my dad, the respect Coach Cutcliffe had for my dad, and my dad loved Coach Cutcliffe too, and he admired him, and their careers had some parallels. Ole Miss is not an easy place to win. Auburn's not an easy place to win. Duke's certainly not an easy place to win, and we were at East Carolina for 6 years before we came to Auburn, and that's not an easy place to win. So it's a great night, a great event, great reunion of sorts, and I could not be more proud as a son of Dad receiving this award and being honored and receiving an award named after what he would tell you right now, if he could stand up here, is the greatest college football coach of all time. And he loved Bear Bryant, so that's saying a lot for Dad to say that.
Thank y'all so much.
My wife's son has played for you at Auburn, Rob and Greg Tomlin.
Do y'all want to cover a little bit of the sponsor event next door?
Never met him once, he probably would.
Both coaches, y'all can go in there and do, just try not to, like, there's gonna be a lot of people in there, so if you kind of get some B-roll, you are welcome to. And then remember, you're welcome to go for the first 15 minutes of the opening of the show if you want to. And I'll start looking for you. We'll probably all be on the right side of the theater, and then we'll exit out that door, but I'll come tap y'all. But yeah, so you're all welcome to go in there and get some B-roll, and then you're welcome to go in for the first 15 minutes. You're welcome. Thank y'all for coming.